Welcome to Customer Driven with Chad McDaniel. Well known throughout the customer leadership industry, Chad has been the chief community leader for Execs in the Know, one of the top executive customer advocacy groups on the planet. With a passion for customer success and a desire to share and develop best practices, Chad's conversations with industry leaders aim to give unfiltered, unplugged access to industry peers who are customer obsessed, just like you. If you enjoy the show, please be sure to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Now here's your host, Chad McDaniel.
Welcome to all our listeners for another episode of Customer Driven with Chad McDaniel. And what a fantastic episode I have scheduled for you here today. Michael Moore, Executive Vice President of Customer Operations from 21st Century Fox, is joining us today. And we've got quite a conversation on tap. But before we get started, again, thank you for your listenership. Customer Driven is a podcast designed especially for the customer executive like you. Everything we feature, everything we talk about is customer success and how a variety of customer leaders like Michael and many others are driving customer engagement within their respective organizations. And I know you're going to love Michael's episode here today. If not already, please rate or subscribe to our podcast. We're on all major platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher. So please get involved. And then finally, for our listeners that are not familiar with Execs in the Know, we are a user community of customer executives, what we call leaders learning from leaders, and really unfiltered, unplugged access to leaders like Michael that are sharing direct insights and best practices, everything customer. You can go to our website, www.execsintheknow.com. We have all sorts of great gatherings and meetings and insights of all types of opportunities for you to get involved. And I will leave it on this, is that for our customer leaders, you're not in this alone. There are so many great people like Michael and many others in our community that really are about advocating customer success and customer cultures within their respective brands. So let's get started. And Michael, thank you. I know I've known of you for a long time. Getting you on the schedule has always been a challenge, but we have you here today. And thank you so much, Michael, for joining us. So a quick hello from you.
No problem at all. Thanks, Chad. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for being persistent in tracking me down. I definitely have been a fan from a distance of the Execs in the Know program. Have tried to make my schedule work to be able to participate with you and some of your members. And it hasn't worked out the way that both of us had hoped. But I am really happy that we were able to sync our schedules up today and have this conversation. So thanks very much, and welcome everybody else to what we have to say today.
Well, Michael, you're a great leader. And for our listeners, again, I'll give you different ways to know Michael throughout this conversation, but he is definitely someone I would encourage you to plug into. He's got great leadership and perspective. Michael, I know when we were talking, when we think a little bit about your background, I mean, 16 years at Time Warner, 18 years at SiriusXM, and then more recently, I think within the last year or two, you've taken this really unique transformative change with Century 21 or it's 21st Century Fox, and you moved from New York to LA. I know you originally grew up in Detroit, like you've shared with me, but I hope the LA crowd is treating you well. And what I think we should do to start out with, Michael, for our listeners is, by title, it's Executive Vice President of Customer Operations, 21st Century Fox. Let's start there, and in kind of your role definition, let's set the stage with our listeners. What does that role mean? What is that what's the accountabilities? What's the responsibilities? Kind of give us an understanding of a day in life.
Absolutely. And before I jump into that, your comment about Los Angeles definitely was a big change. I think in my mind, I wasn't sure if Los Angeles was ready for me, Chad. And I think slowly but surely they're getting used to me for sure. But my role here at 21st Century Fox is something that's new to the organization. And I was hired specifically to be part of a new organization that was going to be responsible, or that is responsible for developing the systems, the operations, the platform processes, et cetera, to prepare the organization for direct-to-consumer offerings. 21st Century Fox, for the longest time, had been one of the leaders, if not the leader, in content development and distribution, and that had been their primary business. But as we all know, the world of video entertainment consumption is changing dramatically, and I think that every organization that's part of the media landscape needs to be prepared for that change. And what 21st Century Fox asked me to do in joining the organization was to come in and lend my experience and expertise and knowledge to help build an organization and prepare the company for just that change. And for me personally, was under the the customer operations umbrella, which entails everything to do with the delivery and support of the subscription services to a customer. So the contact center, of course, if you're going to have a subscription business, then typically you're going to have a contact center to provide support to the customers and subscribers. The CX platform, or some people will still call it a CRM platform, but really the technology platform that allows customers to interact with your company for support. The subscriber management system, which is kind of that mission critical platform that enables billing and subscription management, and really the account kind of record of your subscribers. And then the augmented piece to that, or the connective tissue, to allow you to then go to a payment processor, because if you're going to have a subscription, then you have to charge for it. So the payment processing component, as well as the taxes that go along with that, because at some stage, the local municipalities decided, here's a new business opportunity for us to slap some tax on, and of course we need to then collect and remit the taxes. We don't charge them. Customers should be aware of that. We don't charge tax. We just collect it and send it into the government organization that needs it. But really, that's my umbrella of responsibility, is the operational components necessary to deliver a subscription service to the customer.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about that and some of the transformation and changing that's taking place. Michael, for our listeners, again, 21st Century Fox is quite a large umbrella company with many, many different subsidiaries, and very matrixed in a lot of ways. So quite a foothold with all of those things. What I want to start with, so I guess you were hired to lead the customer operations and preparation of Fox to a direct-to-consumer video entertainment consumption, or the consumption model is changing, I guess, to be able to access video entertainment and kind of rethinking how that business is working. Let's start there a little bit. And again, for the listeners, let's give some examples of that and kind of where the current state is in regards to that direct to consumer in the consumption of the content and the digital piece.
Sure. So I think so. Everybody's very familiar with kind of the disruptor in this category, which is Netflix, right? So Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime, Crackle, and others have been kind of the beginning stages of this dynamic change. Where initially it was cable and satellite providers who gave you, kind of the video entertainment, and now people figured out a way to do it more directly. And on the Fox side, I think it was about preparation for that change to come, but also enabling the business to, make some offerings, maybe even before that kind of, big sweeping change occurred. So we have already either launched or in preparation of launching our first two products direct to customers. The first is a product called FX Plus. We launched back in the July-August timeframe of this year, using all of the infrastructure and the support and the processes that I described a little bit earlier. But it is I think a companion channel to the FX cable network that has benefits and features for people who are fans of the programming and the content on FX. And we sell that directly to customers who have a cable or satellite subscription. And for the first time ever, we directly provide the billing and directly provide the support to the customers who have purchased that particular service. And then we're gearing up for the second direct-to-consumer product that we're launching at the end of this month, called Fox Nation, And Fox Nation will be a very first for Fox, originally developed direct-to-consumer subscription service, produced by the Fox News organization, and really targeting kind of that Fox News superfan, and giving them some additional content that's not repeated on the Fox News network, but something more for them to continue to enjoy in their hunt for news in the vein of Fox News. Beyond that, I think the company has some strategic vision on how they want to go about the direct-to-consumer business, and we're just making sure that everything we do today will enable the company to make the decision that it wants to as that industry starts to change.
And again, for our listeners, Michael, I want to clarify on a couple of things. First of all, in your support operations, your customer is a business to consumer model. In consumer, like majority of the people involved in execs in the know, they may have a multi-complex business to consumer and B2B support operation. In your world, it's 100% business to consumer in what we've been discussing, correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct, Chad. Today it is, focused on the B2C. The B2B role probably comes into play internally, where I do have some internal clients that I think we have to care for. But it's not a B2B in the traditional sense. So our focus really is on the B2C aspect of support.
Got it. And again, for clarification for our listeners, the FX Plus product is one of the ones you've mentioned in here, and of course, Fox Nation. But listeners, the FX Plus, as I understand it, Michael, the product is the FX cable network, where customers can subscribe for, I guess, a subscription model where they get commercial-free access, early preview release, and access to a wide variety of digital content and viewership. Correct?
I would say it's more than just the FX network, right? Because most cable and satellite customers have access to the FX network in the digital space through, kind of the offering that cable and satellite does through their TV Everywhere or TV Anywhere product. What FX Plus is more. It's more of what you get on FX, and in terms of commercial-free, on-demand access to the content that's there, as well as access to the historical library of content that has been available on FX. Even in thinking like one of the fan favorites that we definitely have heard about is Nip Tuck. Nip Tuck was a series that was on FX quite a while ago. It went away and hadn't been available, and it's one of those things that's available on FX Plus as a feature of that service that people are paying a subscription fee for. So it's not just a replication of FX; it's something more, and hence the name Plus in the name, because you're getting a little bit more than what you just would get with the FX service from your cable or satellite provider.
And one last one for clarifications for the listeners as we've set the stage here. Fox Nation, you referenced that product, is a sort of a brand new part of the Fox overall news umbrella organization. It's a direct-to-consumer. It's a digital subscription service. A little bit more expansion on that. Again, just trying to help out our listeners.
Yeah, so Fox Nation is again, it's a member-driven subscription service that will offer 24 hours of content, both live and pre-recorded shows, produced by the Fox News team. They will introduce new talent to the Fox News community, who will be able to share their opinions and thoughts about things that are going on in the world through the Fox Nation channel. They also will take a look at historical events. They'll have other programming that does deeper dives into certain events that have happened over time, that they feel like their audience would be interested in. But it is the first of its kind for the organization as a whole, taking, what is now the number one leader in cable news and quite honestly in cable entertainment, the number one channel, and taking advantage of all of that expertise that exists under the Fox News umbrella and packaging it into a new service offering targeting those Fox News superfans and people who have an interest in what Fox News has to say in a different way. So they're getting it delivered digitally. They can view it however they want to view it, and they can pay for it directly versus having to subscribe as part of their cable or satellite package, and be able to have access to that content in any way that they like.
Okay, perfect. Again, listeners, you're listening to Michael Moore, the Executive Vice President of Customer Operations for 21st Century Fox. Michael, now that we've set the stage, and I think all our listeners get it, um, obviously you were afforded a great opportunity to come in from sort of a greenfield opportunity to build this direct to consumer model. Sounds great on paper. I'm sure it has tons of different challenges and uniqueness to it. Let's start there. A lot of the people that are part of the community run the customer support operations and the channels and everything similar to your world. But in this model, it's got unique pieces to it. What has been some of the challenges as you're been implementing and kind of doing this customer experience retransformation? Walk us through some of that and some of the complexities involved.
So I think, I think one of the first things that I recognized is that I joined an organization that really hadn't focused on the customer. They produced a lot of great content, a lot of great stories, and a lot of great entertainment with a consumer in mind, but they didn't have to have a relationship directly with that customer. And that was definitely a mind shift in the organization to think about both the products that we were going to develop and the way that we were going to support them. Secondarily, I think when you're coming in and there's not anything in front of you and you're able to build from the ground up, what you want to try to do is think about all of the mistakes that you've made in your career, all the things that you wish you could have changed, all the things that you got yelled at for, or all the things that you were told cost too much money, and figure out how not to do those again, right? And as a good leader, I hope that I have learned from a lot of those lessons in the past and take and say, okay, so if I could do it all over again, and I think a lot of us and probably a lot of your listeners have done this, right, Chad? If I could do it all over again, I would do it this way. Or if I could do it differently, I would do it this way. I was lucky enough to be afforded that opportunity to say, I have this blank canvas in front of me. I have an idea of what products or services we're going to offer. Not officially and specifically, but I have an idea of what it's going to be as we're building them, and I need to then take advantage of, what's available to me in the technology space, in the research and data space, and create something that will be the right service experience for our potential customers, fit with the brand image that we expect to have, even if there's going to be more than one brand image that we're going to operate under, and make sure that it's scalable in the sense that we want to be able to grow these things somewhat quickly and potentially, on a very wide basis, meaning not just the United States at some point in time, but think about doing it elsewhere also. Um, in a lot of cases, that sounds like a dream job or a dream opportunity for people. In other cases, people would kind of, get that writer's block syndrome on where to start first and how to do it. Um, but for me, it really was about taking stock of the things that I know I could have done better over the years, and trying not to replicate those and make sure that I eliminated those in the pathway to building an operation and an organization that I thought could be successful in delivering a great experience and supporting a new business.
So really, it's this transformation that has taken place at 21st Century Fox, by bringing someone like you in, Michael, with your experience, but really, like you had mentioned earlier, as an organization, they have unbelievable content and access to all sorts of content, but not really a lens or a focus on the end customer, that business to consumer customer. And you were, in definition, I guess, uh, brought on board to create a better experience for the customer, and your focus taking all those previous learnings that you mentioned, but also bringing technology into that CS experience. Can you give us some examples of kind of where you're at today in that journey, in that path? Maybe a couple examples or wins or kind of state of the state. I think our audience would really enjoy to kind of just, okay, here's where you started, here's where you are today, and some lessons learned.
So sure. Look, I think that with anybody, when you think about building something new, whether it's an operation or an organization like this, or a house, or really anything, there has to be a foundation level set first, and kind of getting an understanding of who you think the customer is going to be and what you have to design for and make sure it's going to match the product or service that you're offering. So there is that kind of early stage of assessment, and not just jumping in and saying, gee, I know how to do this. I've been doing it for 30 years. So let's go do ABC. But taking a little bit of stock on what it is that we have to do, and who we're going to be doing it for, first and foremost, right? And I know that seems pretty basic, but I think a lot of times, particularly when people start in new organizations, they jump in with kind of a direction that has been pre-planned or pre-programmed a little bit in their head, without taking that breath to make sure that that their internal strategy matches what they have to accomplish externally. So first off, taking that breath to make sure that we're going to be able to deliver what is expected, if there are expectations, and also make sure that we have the right pathway, because this is something that's new and developing. I think it'd be really easy to over-engineer your solution. It's the early stage, so sometimes at the early stages, it's a little easier to get approval for funding and for things that you want to do. Sometimes it's a little easier to get access to resources and people, et cetera. But um, that kind of desire, or actually that jump to over-engineer a solution, I think sometimes is something that winds up hurting people, because you can over-engineer something before you truly learn what the business need is by being operational, and wind up having to then fix things that you thought were really going to be the panacea for your business. So taking an approach that laid out the foundation first, allowed you to get into business in an effective and efficient way, but more importantly, having a really clear roadmap, on how you were then going to improve it, in kind of rapid succession, right? I don't know that it would necessarily kind of fall under, a category where you would be doing this in a it probably is a little bit more of a waterfall approach, than it would be other, some sort of other design, but making sure that you laid out the foundation to enable the roadmap that you had, and that roadmap was flexible enough to be able to adapt to what the business and the customer needs were. And that's not always easy. I think it's easy to build something and have it be there, and then hope that the business fits into it, or to run it in a manner that may not be as efficient as everybody wants. And you see that a lot today, right? Particularly in businesses that have gone through mergers and acquisitions, that have legacy platforms and legacy systems that just don't quite work together, but somebody eventually is getting the job done. And typically it falls into the hands of the poor frontline agents, who wind up operating 6 or 7 different systems and cutting and pasting and doing their job, which is probably the hardest job in the company, and not really taking advantage of things that could make it better. But I really took advantage of that, saying, let's not overdo it. Let's put the foundational pieces out there so we can run the business, have a clear roadmap on how we can make it better, and then be able to adapt to what the business needs are with all of this great technology and the great roadmap that we have, in a very fast manner.
And I think with all of what you just stated in the foundation and the roadmap, and you mentioned the waterfall approach, but even with our listeners that have, legacy architect or structures, and they don't have necessarily that clean slate that you were able to kind of work from to redesign the thinking around customer design and CX experience, we still have every option to do things in small design and pilots, regardless of the legacy architect. I'm sure if you think even back at your experience at SiriusXM, a lot of that approach may have been taken in different kind of design tests and other pieces.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chad, right? You absolutely can do some of those pilots and those tests. I think the thing that I have found over time is, a lot of time those pilots and those tests take as much time and energy as a full-blown implementation sometimes. And I would just suggest, that if you start to head in that direction of a pilot or a test of anything, right? I think that's one of I remember, I can't tell you how many times, a BPO partner or a potential BPO partner came to me and said, if you just give us a pilot, just do a test with us, 50 agents. We'll prove to you with just 50 agents that we could be your number one partner. But what a lot of people fail to think about, it takes just as much time, energy, and effort, for me to stand up a pilot with somebody than it does to just make a decision on who the right partner is and go all in on them. So while you're right that I think that there is absolutely a time and a place for a pilot or for a test on some scale by leveraging the things that you have in your current toolbox, I think that it's important to make sure that you're thinking longer term as well, and the effect it has on the operation and the organization, and whether that's all time well spent and the learning is going to be valuable enough to overcome the time, energy, maybe confusion, or effort that might go into that as well. But it has a place for sure. It absolutely has a place. I would just make sure that it's the right place.
Yeah, and actually, I subscribe to what you just said for all the reasons stated. But at the end of the day, do something and make sure it's got a holistic and thoughtful viewpoint and approach. For clarification, Michael, for channel support today in your business to consumer operation model, what channels are you guys supporting for customer response and inquiry support?
We took an approach, Chad, that we're going to be in the digital space in digital products, and we wanted to think digital first and only. And I will, I think that putting up a telephone number for support is always the easiest crutch that any business has. We all know, and those of us who have been in this business for a while know that eventually you're going to have a conversation about the cost of that particular channel. You're going to have a conversation about the quality of that particular channel. And probably a number of other conversations about that particular channel. I'm not here to say that phone is bad or you shouldn't do phone at all, but we all, I think, understand the direction that support is heading into, right? And while I don't think anybody's foolish enough to think that we'll ever get rid of the humans in the business, because there always will be a place for the human capital that provides support. Digital support and automation really are where a lot of people want to go. So we took advantage of that greenfield opportunity and said, can we do this as a digital first and only support operation? And digital not meaning automated completely, because that I think is probably close to impossible if you want to deliver a positive experience. But it was our intention not to have an inbound telephone number for support. After doing our diligence internally and understanding what product we were launching and what we were going to do and who the customers were. The customer piece, I think, is always the challenging part when you're designing your support channels. Because if you have a broad-based kind of large-scale business offering, every single demographic doesn't always want to choose digital as their primary support vehicle. And as all of us who have run large phone-centric operations know, when you're really trying to make that transformation from telephone centric to digital centric, that job is a really, really tough job in most cases. Retraining people to use a new channel to contact your organization is one of the most difficult things you can do. There actually is a study that was done by a professor at the University of Santa Clara, who addressed the issue of how many times you needed a customer to go through a new journey in a new channel to make that become the channel of their choice. And on average, what that study showed was that it was anywhere between 6 and 9 completed journeys for a customer to adopt that new channel as their channel of choice. And that means moving somebody from phone to chat or phone to online support. But if you're a business that has a moderate contact rate, you don't really have 5 or 6 chances in a year, let alone in a shorter period of time, to try to train those customers. So figuring out the right approach up front, I think, is critical to making sure that you've optimized the channels of support to give your customers what they need and give your business what it needs.
Michael, for clarification for the listeners, so digital first or digital support, awesome. Love to learn more. Stay very close to you on that. In today's, can you just define exactly what those channels of support are? Is it well, I'll let you define that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably what most people think. It's a digital support center or knowledge base. It's chat, and it's a web form or email. I think the digital support center or the knowledge base needs to be robust, and it needs to be intuitive for your customer. And it needs to have a level of intelligence to it so that you can start to serve up knowledge to the customer during their support journey instead of making them go find it, right? So that's how I think about that part. On the chat side, I think chat needs to act like the customer wants it to act. When you're on a desktop environment, for chat, it can kind of be traditional, and I think people expect it to be traditional type of chat. But in a mobile environment, you can make your chat seem more like an SMS conversation, even if you don't offer SMS based support. So it's something people are comfortable with, and they're used to texting, and they can do that same level of support. There's some challenges in that because then people start to think of it as more of an asynchronous channel, right, than synchronous, and they can walk away from it and then come back to it later on. And that's, I think, a new and developing challenge in the support space overall that hasn't quite been figured out yet from a workforce management perspective, but it'll get there. And then the third is kind of the web form or the email piece. My preference really is a web form, so you can contain the customer in terms of what they're communicating and how they're choosing some of the topics to communicate versus a free form. Here's our email address and send it to us, because everything that we want to do is think about this for the future, so that if we have designs on trying to automate some of these transactions or make them more efficient, we have to be somewhat consistent in how the customer is communicating with us. And what we've done is we've taken steps to make sure that our digital support center, our chat operation, and our web form/email operation are all designed to allow us to improve them with some level of service automation over time. As we learn what our customers need, we can build up some history and put more knowledge into our technology to drive the automation that we think can make us better.
Okay, and again, listeners, you've been listening to Michael Moore, the Executive Vice President of Customer Operations with 21st Century Fox. Michael, we just have a couple of more minutes here. I'm going to ask you on the tools you described or the support channels, chat, knowledge, the knowledge base, the web form. Are these homegrown or did you go through a third-party provider? You don't have to name who that is, but how did you approach those for our listeners?
Yeah, I don't know if I like any of them yet to give them a free commercial, so I won't name them. And we all know we always have a love-hate relationship with a lot of these partners, right? But we didn't go home built, quite honestly, because I don't look. I kind of subscribe to the theory that if somebody is out there putting a product on the shelf, why do I need to go reinvent the wheel unless I have a very specific product that has a very specific need? But there are a lot of great technologies and great tools out there that can absolutely support the business at different stages and different levels. I think it's important to pick the one that can support your business today and tomorrow, right? And I think that's the one thing that people don't always think about is the tomorrow piece. But we did decide to go with some best in class technology providers for our CX platform and for our subscriber management system. And then went traditional routes for the payment processing and the taxation components. And then we decided that we were going to outsource our contact center operation. As much as some people hold that contact center operation near and dear to their heart and feel like there's no way that you can get the same brand affinity from those employees as you can from your own employees, I think that the one thing that I've been able to do in my career and that I feel really good about is that all of my outsourced partner relationships and the outsourced operations really operate as an extension of my team. And I'm confident that we have the ability to make sure that they're operating under the kind of the brand affinity that's required. And on top of that, not too many companies are set up to be a contact center company, right? It's a unique skill and a unique operation to run a call center or a contact center. And not everybody can do that. And I think if there are people who do it really well, then I want to take advantage of those people and leverage them versus try to create it myself, unless it's necessary.
Okay, so just a couple of things, listeners, that for our end users, our corporate brand end users, Execs the Know does have a private online community. It's free to join, where we share best tools of the providers and what's working, not working in some of the tool sets that are out there. So I take advantage of that. And the second thing is on outsourcing. It's not too late for our end users. We are hosting an outsourcing briefing at Microsoft December 6th in Seattle. It is again for all of the end users. If you're doing outsourcing, considering outsourcing, it's an all-day briefing of best practices and insights from brand users. I encourage you to come join us for the briefing at Microsoft on December 6th. My final question to you, Michael, based on time, everyone that's listening to your episode today really is passionate about customer success and a customer-centric environment. At the end of the day, we're all very passionate about doing the right thing for our end customers and creating that really defining opportunity of customer experience within our brand. From your lens of experience, again, and even looking at in the last couple of years, leave us with a couple of thoughtful suggestions, insights, words of wisdom, but help us out, Michael. Give us some ideas of how we can continue to create customer success in our own organizations.
So there are definitely a couple of things that come to mind. First and foremost, I think you have to find a support or an advocate within the executive ranks of your organization, regardless of what level you're at. Unless you are the CEO and you are the top end decision maker, you have to make sure that you can get, and it doesn't have to be direct sponsorship, but you have to get alignment from your executive team that the customer experience and the way that you treat your customers is important, and not just that they say it, but that they mean it. I definitely have been lucky in my career so far that I have had that support, or I've been able to build that support. Um, and that I think is critical to anybody who wants to have success in this customer experience and customer support, industry or vertical or operation, whatever you want to call it. I have been through those scenarios of banging your head on the wall because you just want to do the right thing for a customer, but the company has different objectives, or the customer isn't one of those objectives. So working hard to make the customer be one of your core values or one of your core objectives, I think is really important. And sometimes it only takes one advocate in the senior ranks, but you definitely have to work hard at that internally so that they understand the value of that customer experience. The second thing I think is to always kind of think about forward. I know in a lot of cases our business is about yesterday. We look at yesterday's performance and yesterday's data and yesterday's metrics and yesterday's volume, et cetera. And it is important to do that for sure. But thinking forward about how you can improve on all those things that you talked about from yesterday can be some of the best time that you spend with your organization. Rehashing history has a value at certain times, but I think you find so much more value in saying, we achieved our goals yesterday, or we didn't achieve our goals yesterday, and we know why, right? And if you're thinking more about how to improve and about going forward, the understanding why you didn't achieve or you did achieve the numbers will be easier and allow you to kind of be set for success on a go forward basis also. And the last thing I think I might say about driving success in this area is building the right team around you. It's rare that one person can do it by themselves. Although I know there's a lot of folks out there who will say that they are kind of the center of everything customer. And I know some of those people personally. And I know for a fact they're not the center of that. But making sure that you build a good team around you to be able to fill the roles necessary to support a customer, because there are a lot of them, right? And I know sometimes it's tough to kind of get alignment on all of the roles that you may need to be successful, but that's where the first suggestion comes into place by having that executive alignment or executive sponsorship. But having the right team in place, I think, is critical to that success as well, where people have a shared vision of what you want to accomplish and how you want to accomplish it, and that picking the right team includes your outsourced partner or your CX partner. Taking the time to make sure that you have the right partners and the right team is the thing that can make you most successful overall, and can never underestimate the value of that. Whether again it's your head of training, your outsource partner, your CX platform, or your business analyst, right? They're all incredibly critical to the success, and making sure that you're doing the right thing by all of them, I think, is really important.
Outstanding. Well said. And I'm glad that was recorded so our listeners can go back and listen to that again a couple of times. Michael, you've been a terrific guest. I cannot thank you enough. For our listeners, if there's something in today's podcast that you would like to clarify with Michael, feel free to email me, chad@execsintheknow.com. I'll try to do my best to get that question answered, or to get you in touch with Michael directly. And the final piece is, folks, get involved. There's so many ways to get involved with the peer group like Michael and Execs in the Know, and I strongly encourage that. The final piece is, if you enjoyed today's episode, I please ask you to rate it and subscribe to Customer Driven Podcast. You've been a great group of listeners over the series, and I do appreciate your support and continued advocacy. So on behalf of Execs in the Know, Michael Moore, thank you very much, and I really wish everyone the best with the rest of their day. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Customer Driven with Chad McDaniel. If you enjoyed the show, please be sure to rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. It really makes a difference in helping others find the podcast. For more information on our customer experience community, please visit execsintheknow.com.